The Decameron by Boccaccio. Giovanni Boccaccio. This is just a paperback book. I have a few. This is a Penguin edition. And the translator, let's find out. I think we actually say fairly early on who the translator is. If I can find it. G.H. McWilliam. I've read two, well, let's call it 1.5 translations. This is a better one. I like this one. There's not much to see inside. It's a big book, but there aren't any illustrations or anything like that inside. The Decameron is a story of people who left the city to travel off to the countryside to avoid the plague. This is in the 1300s. To get rid of the plague. A bunch of nobles, men and women. And to pass the time, they decided to tell stories. So there were 10 of them, and they each told 10 stories over time, which adds up to 100 stories. And that's the idea. And they had rules. Someone was the king or queen of the day who got to decide what stories it would be. And there was one person who could tell, that is to say, they would decide the theme for that day. And then there was one person who could tell whatever story he wanted. He didn't have to worry about the theme. But generally, it's these 12 stories. This book brings, not this edition, but an earlier edition that I read with a different translator, is one of my 2 most hated translation notes that I ever read. I won't talk too much about the story itself. It was on the 3rd day, the 10th story. That's how it's broken up. So you can see this is the story from the 4th day. It's the introduction. So let's see. This is the 4th day, 8th story. And then you move on. And it's the 5th day, 1st story. And then we'll skip ahead. 5th day, 8th story, like that. Okay? So on the 3rd day, 10th story is a pretty dirty tale. Okay? It's a lot of sex in it. And the translator of the edition that I had, not this one just prints it, it translates it. They didn't just say, we don't want to translate this because we're prudish, or we don't want to translate this because our audience is high school 9th graders or something like that. They actually pretended that it was untranslatable. They said, oh, this has too many difficult terms and too much idiom, so we can't translate this. We're going to leave it in the Italian. To their credit, they did actually leave it in the book, but they left it in the original Italian from the 1300s. So that really annoyed me because I knew there's no such thing as a completely untranslatable story. And I had to go a long time before I found, this was before the days of the before you could easily find something on the internet. It took a while for me to find that one and try to, what was the story? I didn't even know enough about it to look it up. And I had forgotten long before which day it was. But eventually I found it. Anyway, here we have Giovanni Boccaccio, the Decameron.